Delighted to say, still joining me is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you once again for joining us. Let's come back. Let's start actually in this hour with the almost 4 million people denied a vote in local elections. Yep. Blatant attack on democracy. Even the Electoral Commission has said this is unacceptable. The reason given by the government, which is expected to cancel at least 27 local elections, of course, elections in Scotland, Wales going ahead, elections across large parts of the country going ahead, they're claiming under an obscure clause in the 2000 Local Government Act, which gives them the power to delay votes, they're saying that basically a lot of them are basically rearranging, they're restructuring, abolishing some district councils, introducing moralities and otherwise, and saying that, if you haven't really got the money, the time, the organisation to run elections, you can postpone them for another year. The independent watchdog, the Electoral Commission, said this doesn't constitute the sort of exceptional circumstances that are in this act, like war, pandemic, even then. Americans had a presidential election during the pandemic. We have a pothole pandemic, yeah.
That must count.
They say that it just doesn't justify it, but they're going to go ahead with it. Most of the councils have said we'll cancel and delay on Labour. Yeah. What a surprise. What do you make of this?
I can smell, there's two words that you put together, and the first one is bull.
I do have to tell him in the you're not allowed to say certain things.
I'll not, I can't remember what the second one is. This is actually the government trying to stop backbench revolts and further splits in the backbenches of the Labour Party, because if all these new Labour MPs suddenly see that in the local councils in their area, the vote has shifted completely and they're going to be one-shot wonders, they're then going to want to make their own voice heard for the short period of time that they've got left in Parliament, and therefore they're going to revolt against everything that the government's doing and cause the government more pain. So what they're trying to do is delay that inevitability. Their MPs are clearly too thick to recognise that that's what's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary. But we look at some of the areas. I mean, Labour areas, it's Hyndburn, Preston, Blackburn with Darwen, Chorley and Exeter, all Labour-run councils that confirm they'll delay their elections. 7 more expected to delay. Lib Dems, Cheltenham, they've confirmed they're Lib Dem and confirmed they're going to delay. Conservatives, East Sussex and West Sussex, the councils, they've confirmed delays. I mean, they should absolutely not do that. It's absolutely outrageous. Correct. I know Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, said, this shouldn't be happening. Yep. But I don't, again, doesn't seem to have the power to stop this. But I mean, it's just outrageous. I thought it was outrageous that we had local elections postponed during the pandemic. I say when the Americans were able to hold a presidential election across the whole country. For goodness sake.
I'm sorry, the people need to take control again, and in the local councils they need to make it very, very become very, very vocal, let it known to the local councils that they need the elections to go ahead, or you're going to be punished even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And they really do. And again, it's something actually the Conservative Shadow Attorney General, Lord Wolfson, told us a bit earlier. He said, I would rather that people, voted for any party other than my party than didn't vote. You've got to go out and vote. You don't keep powers. The government thinks they can get away with this because people don't really care about local elections. Here's my thing. You can never moan about your bin collections. You can never moan about the potholes. You can never moan about whatever local services there are. Litter in the street. You don't get to moan about anything if you don't vote. It's one of the first questions I ask people when they moan about something in their local area. Did you vote at the last election? Because I did. I voted I've never missed a single election, as far as I'm aware, since I first had the right to vote.
All of the things that are happening in this country at the minute are the initial indicators of what has happened in every country that's turned into a dictatorship. Where elections
that escalated quickly.
Where elections have been banned and disappear.
Because it just makes it easier. It sets the precedent. I've seen a lot of people online say, what if Keir Starmer tries to delay the general election? I think at that point, by the way, I think the King steps in at that point.
Well, we'd hope the King...
I mean, that will be the job of a constitutional monarchy. He should step in at that point.
It is, but the trouble is, Keir Starmer has got the majority in Parliament to change the Parliament Act and to allow that to happen. And to delay the general election, turn around and say the world is a more unstable place. Use exactly the same excuse that he's using for local elections, but take it into
And I would have said a few years ago, conspiracy theory. But here's the thing. After what happened during lockdown, after the abject lack of any scrutiny, any proper debate. But people, I mean, literally, even within Cabinet, under the Tories, even in Cabinet ministers, and I've had it verified for about 4 or 5, in Cabinet ministers, when they have Zoom meetings, they're supposed to be debating the policy of the country about whether or not we're allowed to leave our sodding homes or not, travel, you know, go to work even. The Cabinet ministers were kept on mute. Yeah. So they couldn't speak. So they weren't able to sit and go, excuse me, no, Prime Minister. They were on mute and only allowed to speak. And I'm sorry, that is not how governments work. And there's no reason why a pandemic should stop people being able to have that debate. So I no longer trust any of them.
And this government is muting more people than even the Tories did.
No, exactly. Do you know who needs to be muted? And that's Craig Guildford, the West Midlands Chief Constable. He needs to be out of a job. He needs to, frankly, I think he needs to be prosecuted. We were discussing a bit earlier. He really is beyond the pale in terms of what he has done. Oh, goodness me, extraordinary breaking news we've just had in the last couple of moments. Kemi Badenoch has sacked her Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. The Tory leader has sacked... Now, again, we know these were the two rivals for the Tory leadership back in 2024. There's no doubt at all that Robert Jenrick has continued with his leadership ambitions, shall we say. We also know there's been quite a lot of speculation. There's been quite a speculation about also his perhaps he's been more warm towards reform. Who knows? But she has just given a statement confirming that Robert Jenrick has been sacked from the Shadow Cabinet. He's had not just lost his job in the Shadow Cabinet, he's had the Tory whip removed and his party membership suspended. Bearing in mind, a year ago, this was the man who came a close second to being the Tory leader. Kemi Badenoch has just said, I was presented with clear, irrefutable evidence that he was plotting in secret to defect in a way designed to be as damaging as possible to his shadow cabinet colleagues and the wider Conservative Party. The British public, she says, are tired of political psychodrama, and so am I. They saw too much of it in the last government. They're seeing too much of it in this government. I will not repeat those mistakes. So it would appear Kemi Badenoch has sacked the leading members of her shadow cabinet, removed his party membership even, because she says she has clear, irrefutable evidence he was plotting to defect, presumably to reform in a way that would damage the party. Extraordinary news. Philip, what do you make of this news?
Well, there's been lots of speculation over recent weeks of Robert Jenrick defecting to reform and planning to do that. So
that if he was leader, that he would work with them more closely.
Well, yes, but you know, there's been a lot of disinformation going on around and a lot being played out, and clearly she has got some evidence and has decided to. Actually, this is showing real leadership by taking the initiative. If the evidence is there, and it's very clear indeed.
If of course one would now expect if he was planning to go that he would go.
Yes.
That this would certainly hasten that.
Very much so.
But then it would be a sort of, well, yeah, you know, you're now sacked, but. How damaging do you think this is? He's a very prominent member of the party. Bearing in mind, of course, he did resign from the Conservative government. He worked in the Home Office, immigration, and his line was, look, I resigned because I couldn't, you know, we weren't going to do what we promised we would do. That was his line. There's an awful lot of Tories I've spoken to on air and off air who very much supported him as a candidate. Loads who've actually got quite a lot of sympathies with reform, interestingly. He's been playing a blinder on social media. It's got to be said. You know, we have a regular weekly slot here when he comes in, you know, and answers questions from our audience. He's very prolific online and on air, much more so than Kemi Badenoch certainly was being. She's been doing a lot better in the last few months, and it's interesting that Tory polls picking up a little bit. People want to see their opposition leaders. How big a threat to her is she? Because there's an element where, with him out of the party, his threat is gone.
His threat has gone, but his threat has shifted, and we're going to see this. And we said this last year several times. We're going to see this more and more as we get closer to the general election from senior Tory frontbenchers, from Tory backbenchers, from former Tory ministers and MPs defecting to reform because they can see the potential for them to get back into Parliament again.
Yeah.
And actually, from a reform perspective, who have not got people with a depth and understanding of how to run a government.
Someone who's been at the heart of government.
It's going to be good, but what it's going to do is dilute reform and turn it into Tory too.
I think that Robert Jenrick is a very different matter from Nadhim Zahawi.
Yes.
Simply because Nadhim Zahawi was someone who was sacked.
Yep.
Whereas Robert Jenrick is a frontbencher, as almost became Tory leader, and could perhaps, if there was a decision after local elections, Tories didn't do well, could perhaps already still have an opportunity of being Tory leader. And somebody who has got a bit more credibility on a number of issues than Nadhim Zahawi, who's totally and utterly imbued in the failures of the last Tory government. But if you're just tuning in, just to remind you, and just recap what Kemi Badenoch has said, she has confirmed that Robert Jenrick has been sacked from the Shadow Cabinet as Shadow Justice Secretary. He's had the whip removed, so he's no longer sitting as a Tory MP, he's now an independent, and he's even had his party membership suspended. This is what Kemi Badenoch had to say in a statement. I was presented with clear, irrefutable evidence that he was plotting in secret to defect in a way designed to be as damaging as possible to his shadow cabinet colleagues and the wider Conservative Party. The British public, Kemi Badenoch says, are tired of political psychodrama, and so am I. They saw too much of it in the last government. They're seeing too much of it in this government. I will not repeat those mistakes. Now, she ain't wrong about the psychodrama. One of the things the British public, changing a Prime Minister, something the Prime Minister at PMQs, had a dig at the Tories about, changing a Chancellor, changing a Prime Minister, all this, going, who's battling who, another leadership contest. Public don't like it. They like united parties, or they also want a party that knows what it's united about.
But they also want clear leadership. And actually what she's showing here, if she's got that irrefutable evidence, is a level of leadership that she has been criticised for not displaying beforehand. So this is a decisive move forward, as she criticises Keir Starmer for his U-turns and showing poor leadership and all the rest of it. She's actually stepped up and done something, being proactive. That, in our Parliament, is something that's quite unusual.
That will be seen as a sign of strength, certainly. But, looking at it from the other side, how pessimistic must a senior member of the shadow cabinet be about the prospects of the Conservative Party in the general election, which is still years away? Well, if he is willing to jump ship, presumably, I'm going to guess this was going to be just before local elections or something like that.
But if they're sitting there looking at the polls and looking at the decimation that's coming and anticipating what's going to happen, not just in the local elections, but the elections in Scotland and the elections in Wales, they're reading the tea leaves and going, actually, to get into the position where I am going to properly establish myself in reform, for reform to either form the next government or be part of the coalition in the next government and have a position that suits my experience and that I want to get, I need to have several years.
Do you know who knows whose nose is going to be out of joint? I'm just thinking quite some of the reform folk who were perhaps hoping to get, say, Shadow Home Secretary or Home Secretary.
And whenever you get the likes of Jenrick coming across, who has had leadership bids for the Conservative Party, this is where Nigel Farage, if he accepts him in, and it's up to he may not accept him in, but Nigel needs to then go and, well, we've got someone who's got leadership ambitions. We know that they're clear leadership ambitions. We know that someone is someone who's got leadership experience in government.
Absolutely.
I need to watch myself.
Yeah, well, that's not bad. I think competition is always good in these circumstances. I would love to hear your response to this. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. I'd much prefer a call, much more immediacy. Get in touch. What do you make of Robert Jenrick basically being suspended even from the Conservative Party, let alone from the shadow cabinet? Looks like he was going to defect. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say he wasn't going to defect to the Greens. Going out on a limb there, guys. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the Greens. He wasn't going to go...
Lib Dems?
Well, Lib Dem. I don't think it was going to happen.
Scottish National Party?
Pretty sure he was going to go to reform. Now, of course, Nigel Farage would much prefer this to have been something he could control, bringing out. But again, it's a very big difference between bringing out a previously sacked ex-MP, from onto the stage and introduce someone who still ostensibly has a big future in Conservative politics ahead of him,
and
Robert
whose
Jenrick.
popularity is growing.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, the Guido Fawkes website, they know their stuff. They say that Nigel Farage says he hadn't agreed a defection with Robert Jenrick, although he does say, of course, I've talked with Robert Jenrick. Had we signed and sealed a deal? No. Question is, of course, would he accept Robert Jenrick? I would have thought absolutely.
Yeah, and I think he's going to accept a greater number of former Tory MPs, ministers, and current ones.
And there will be many more to come.
If you get them, and there will be many more to come. You know, a lot of waiting to after the local elections to read the tea leaves, and then.
But again, I suppose it's one of those things with people who are who are going to defect. There's going to be sort of statute of limitations, isn't there? There's an element where the biggest brownie points, the biggest jobs are going to go to the people who defect early, not someone who 3 weeks before a general election, with the polls suggesting they'd lose, go, all right, I give in. Those people are not going to be trusted.
And I wait with bated breath for the first Labour MPs to jump to reform.
I think that's going to happen in the Red Wall.
Some of those who realise that they're going to be one-shot wonders are going to go, actually, I quite like this staying in Parliament. I want to keep the job. I don't really care what colour flag I wear. I'll say whatever I need to say to stay in the job. Yeah,
it's going to be absolutely fascinating. Give us a call. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think that Robert Jenrick should be welcomed into reform? Again, or the Greens or the Lib Dems. I don't know, maybe he's gone to Labour. Who knows? Nigel Farage says he hadn't agreed a defection. Of course, he's talked with Robert Jenrick. They've had the conversations. Of course, they've had the conversations. Signed and sealed a deal. So we don't know if Robert Jenrick's got a particular shadow job or anything like that, such as they really have those roles there, actually. But